Welcome to the Gay Liberation Network on Chicago Access Network Television. My name is Andy Thayer, and with me tonight is our special guest, Joe Scarry, who has been really taking the lead, not just locally, but frankly nationally, in terms of calling attention to the very serious civil liberties issues involved with the Guantanamo Bay prison camp, which is, as Joe will explain, just a small part of a much larger problem. But Joe in particular has taken a particularly interesting angle in terms of highlighting how bad the situation is there, not just for the detainees so-called there, but frankly what it does for civil liberties in general. So Joe, if you could let our viewers know, how did you get involved in this?
Well, it started here in Chicago, and I went down to a film at the Siskel Center downtown, and it was this film right here, which is called The Response, and it was screening one afternoon mainly for an ABA audience, and at the time I knew very little about Guantanamo, and in the course of an afternoon there, it really changed my life. I became involved in the issue and just haven't stopped since.
Yeah. So, and you are now like an associate producer or something.
Right.
And this isn't just, a couple buddies got together and put together a nice little DVD with a little fancy packaging. Tell us about who's involved in this.
Yeah, well, it's a very interesting story. So the Response is a film that was created by a man named Sig Leibowitz, who is a Hollywood actor and producer who had to go back to live in Baltimore and went to law school. And when he was in law school, he was exposed to a little bit of the information about what's been going on at Guantanamo. And the minute he saw some of the facts about Guantanamo, he said, I've got to make a film about this. I need to tell people about this. And he was able to attract people like Peter Rieger, who was in Animal House, Kate Mulgrew, who many people know as Captain Janeway from Star Trek, and Asif Mandvi from The Daily Show, to participate in this film about Guantanamo. And this 30-minute short film ultimately won the ABA Silver Gavel Award and was shortlisted for an Academy Award in its category for that year. So it's a tremendous production. Yeah.
And the reason why we're talking about this here tonight is not just the ongoing tortures, but coming up January 11th, it'll be 10 years since then President Bush set up Guantanamo. And many of us may remember that President Obama's first promise, literally minutes after he was sworn into office, was to close down the Guantanamo prison. And he hasn't done that. And there's apparently a proliferation of secret prisons now in Afghanistan. People may remember the hue and cry around the world, and rightfully so, about the so-called extraordinary renditions. Now, apparently, President Obama's solution to that is, oh, well, we're not going to imprison people maybe quite as much as President Bush. Instead, we're going to assassinate them. Right. You know, so we've got a situation where we've got illegal imprisonments all over Afghanistan and God knows where else. Of course, Guantanamo, which is Cuban territory, and yet the United States has decided to take this over. So, I mean, Guantanamo Bay is just simply a symbol of a much larger problem.
That's right.
Yeah.
And, you know, to give you a flavor of this, one day I was out at lunch with somebody who had worked with us on some screenings of The Response, a retired Air Force general, talking about this problem, and he said, it's not just Guantanamo, think about Bagram and the rest of Afghanistan. And he said, and we said, well, how many people does the United States have detained at Bagram? He said, well, perhaps 500, but you're asking me the wrong question. We said, well, what's the right question? He said, ask me how many people are being detained on the U.S. say-so in prisons across Afghanistan.
Right.
And that is a question that we all need to look into. It's probably tens of thousands, and frankly, under the U.S. doctrine of secrecy around everything that has to do with the wars that it's fighting, we don't know that information.
Well, and people may know that Private Bradley Manning, the alleged WikiLeaker, whose case the Gay Liberation Network, as well as many others, have been very much involved with. He is on trial, not on trial right now, but he's going through some very important pre-trial hearings after being imprisoned without charge for a large part of the time, a year and a half. One of the things that initially prompted him to begin questioning what's going on was not just how the U.S. military dealt with gay people like himself, but also he was seeing the U.S. military shut its eyes to Iraqi personnel, basically being handed over personnel by the U.S. military and then torturing them. Right. And that's you know, if the leaks about what he was allegedly chatting about online are to be believed, that is what what initially prompted him to blow the lid on U.S. war crimes in Iraq, and of course then everything came from there.
And it's a very difficult problem because, in fact, the military has a very large legal infrastructure, many lawyers and judges who are called JAGs, and everyone in the military is sworn to uphold the U.S. Constitution.
But only Bradley Manning pretty much did it.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And I think that there are many, many people in the military today who are confronting what they know from the standpoint of their conscience and from the standpoint of the law that they have learned. They know that it is wrong.
Well, and I'd like to, we mentioned the January 11th anniversary coming up here, and I'd just like to get a little bit of information up on our screen about that. Right. Here we can see there is going to be a demonstration on January 11th. Joe, tell us a little bit about this.
Well,
what's going on in January 11th?
January 11th is going to be a huge day nationally and internationally. A coalition of organizations, including Amnesty International, World Can't Wait, Code Pink, Witness Against Torture, and about 10 other organizations have gotten together nationally to put together a demonstration in Washington, D.C., in which hundreds and perhaps thousands of people in orange jumpsuits will be lining the streets of Washington, D.C. It will truly be a day where people can no longer ignore this issue. And there are going to be solidarity actions in cities across the country and in cities overseas, Paris, London, etc. In Chicago, we'll have a major action right downtown in Federal Plaza, 3 p.m., right at Adams and Dearborn, and there'll be a rally and followed by a demonstration. So we encourage everybody to participate, and I can talk a little bit more about some of the associated activities that are going to be taking place in Chicago in the days before and after January 11th.
Well, tell us about that, Joe.
The weekend before, January 11th falls on a Wednesday. So the weekend before Saturday the 7th, there will be a teach-in all day downtown at Grace Place. And at that...
637 South Dearborn.
Okay, thanks, yeah. We will be having a screening of our film, The Response. A number of Guantanamo lawyers will be speaking on the panel. We'll also be learning about some of the prosecution of some of these crimes that have been committed by our government, war crimes. We'll also have people talking about other aspects of detention that have grown out of this Guantanamo detention. So there's that all-day teach-in.
And that begins at what time on the 7th?
9 a.m. on the 7th, and it'll go all day.
9 a.m., 637 South, Dearborn. Is there any admission charge for that?
No, there's not.
There you go. So you can find out straight from attorneys that have to deal with the mess that the United States has created. You can find out about that on January 7th. And, of course, then please attend this demonstration on January 11th right here in Chicago. And I understand there's going to be a march on Obama 2012 headquarters as part of it as well. Which is important. Again, this was the first promise he made, and in addition to so many other promises, of course, this one went by the wayside. Our viewers should probably also know, oops, sorry about that, should know that that there is more information you can get at various websites. Do you want to, we're going to get that up on our screen here in a moment. This is a demonstration, I believe, in London that occurred. Right. So this truly is a worldwide protest movement about Guantanamo.
That's right.
Joe, do you want to say something about this website we got up on the screen here?
This is a site at which we're going to update information about time and place of all events in the Chicago area as soon as it becomes available. So that actually goes to my own personal blog. And by going to that single link, you can learn about the teach-in, you can learn about the demonstration, you can learn about another event that's happening the following weekend I'll tell you about, and as well as additional links to actions happening in other cities.
So what is this other activity that's happening up the weekend after?
Okay.
Yeah.
So on the following weekend, Saturday the 14th, something very exciting is happening. There is a person who, besides some of us in Chicago, is really the world expert on Guantanamo, and his name is Andy Worthington.
Okay.
Andy Worthington's from London, and he is a person who day in, day out has been working on getting the truth out about what's been happening at Guantanamo and with this detention issue. He will be coming to the United States for these demonstrations, and we're lucky to have him in Chicago on the 14th, where he will screen his film called Outside the Law, Stories from Guantanamo.
Okay. Okay.
At, I think it's 1 o'clock p.m. at Loyola Law, and you can find that on that website that I provided.
Well, and we'll show that website a little bit later in the program as well, so you can find out all about the January 11th demonstration and the 10th anniversary of Guantanamo, as well as the teach-in the weekend before at Grace Place, starting at 9 a.m. on the 7th. There's a lot of really unique information you can possibly tap into if you get behind your couch and go outside. It'll be well worth it. And I've seen the response that the film that Joe is involved in. It's a great film. You know, Kate Mulgrew. What Star Trekky fan can do without that?
She's
a great actress.
And when I first saw this film, Kate Mulgrew was at the screening, and at the end of the screening, she was the first person on the panel to speak, and she said, I made this film because I think our Constitution has been driven off the rails, and every one of us has to do something about fixing it. And my jaw hung open. I couldn't believe it, that a big star like that,
Hollywood actress,
this was important enough for her to do something. And it begs the question, what are you doing? And I think we all need to do something. To fix this.
Well, and you look at the various civil liberties attacks that are seem to be unfolding here in Chicago in the run-up to the G8 and NATO, and you have to say, well, what started in Guantanamo will eventually get to you. As those who are not aware, our program next week, we're going to be on the air next Friday night as well, and 30th, we're going to be having a guest speaking about the various civil liberties attacks. And I think you have to say, once you take away rights from one group of people, it invariably spreads. I mean, the old Pastor Niemöller quote from Nazi Germany, where it said, first they came for the Jews, and then they came for the communists, and I didn't do anything because I wasn't either, and eventually it got to me, and no one's left to protest. And that's, unfortunately, we're not on the eve of Nazi Germany, fortunately, in this country, but you have to say the same trend holds that if you allow one group of people to have their rights deprived of, whether they're U.S. citizens or not, in this case they're non-citizens, that it wasn't too long ago that, yeah, they were bumping off, which is the kind term for it, foreign nationals in other countries. And now, of course, it's okay to kill United States citizens. And if the new defense bill goes through, if President Obama signs it, and it's not clear he's going to veto it, if that bill goes through, then really everyone is now going to be enshrined in law the idea that the United States government can kill people, and as well as imprison people without detention, without charges, I should say.
So you're referring to the National Defense Authorization Act, which is the NDAA, and many people, I think, watching the show today are probably aware that under the version that is now ready for the president's signature, the United States military is authorized to detain U.S. citizens. Now, this is something that's so inimical to the civil liberties ideas that so many people in the United States have, that even some very conservative politicians have said, this is going too far. This violates fundamental ideas about who gets to do what in our country. Namely, the military does not get to act against the citizens of the United States.
Well, I mean, for one thing, it tears up the Magna Carta, 16th century, led, fundamental advancement in human rights. Right. That is gone. And also the U.S. Constitution, posse comitatus, I believe is the term, where the U.S. military is not supposed to be acting on U.S. soil against citizens, let alone non-citizens. And basically, we have had a situation where a whole series of rights were taken away from non-citizens in this country, which has in turn paved the way for taking away those same rights from citizens. So, I mean, I think everyone should be concerned about whoever gets attacked, but unfortunately many Americans didn't really pay attention when, for example, Arab nationals, Muslims from other countries and so forth were attacked. Well, now this is all, the chickens are coming home to roost.
I'd like to, you referred to the Magna Carta, and one of the ideas that's so important, and I think many people feel a little uncomfortable with this idea of habeas corpus, and why is habeas corpus such an important idea. But when you speak to any attorney, they will tell you that habeas corpus, that idea that people cannot be locked away in a black hole, cannot be locked away and they throw away the key.
Without giving a reason.
There has to be a way to bring them forward and let's know why they're in there. And if you do not have that, then all these other rights, right of free speech, right of assembly, right of religion, that goes out the window.
Yeah, we just had a case in China yesterday where, of course, a well-known activist was just locked away for 9 years for basically criticizing the government. How is the United States different if we're doing the same thing? I mean, we get all high and mighty, our politicians especially, about criticizing other countries for their fundamental lack of human rights. And certainly China is a horrible place for human rights. But when the United States is now saying that it can lock people away without charges indefinitely, how different is the United States? I mean, the level of hypocrisy is something that rightfully galls human rights activists around the world, and to have these sort of attacks coming out of a president who isn't some dumb idiot like our previous president, but frankly a very bright guy who was a constitutional law scholar at our University of Chicago. Those of you with UFC degrees, you might want to trade in for something a little more useful if this is the kind of product that's being generated out of there. But a constitutional law scholar signing off on the destruction of the Magna Carta.
There's a concept here that I think it's very important for everybody to understand in order to effectively participate in these protests of what's going on with the detention. There has become an idea that there are certain people who don't really have a status and so they don't get to be treated by
don't count.
law. They don't count. And this specific idea is some people are unlawful enemy combatants. So people are said to not deserve having treatment under civilian law. They don't deserve treatment under military law. Well, what kind of treatment do they get? Well, we'll make that up as we go along. So this whole question of, well, why are there people who don't have the right of habeas corpus? They don't have to have any explanation about what's happening to them. Well, we have an explanation for that. Those are those bad people involved in terrorism who are unlawful enemy combatants.
Well, and the thing that's important to note is that nowhere in the U.S. Constitution is there any distinction between the rights of citizens and non-citizens. The Constitution does not make those kind of distinctions, that if you're born in this country, you are a citizen. And right now we're seeing a series of attacks, first rolled out against non-citizens, and basically dehumanizing non-citizens. And that's just the opening salvo against attacks against everyone.
Right.
And so it's something that, I mean, this is where being forthrightly against the chauvinism of the United States that says that U.S. citizens are somehow special versus other people, why it's important for people to say, no, the important thing is you're a human being. Right. And you deserve rights whether you're a citizen or a non-citizen. We've already seen the attacks that have come out, that have been rolled out against immigrant communities, and now citizens are potentially paying the price.
That's right. And I would invite the viewers of this show to use your conscience, use your common sense, and ask yourself the question, do you agree with the United States government, which says there are people who don't have a status, so they don't have any rights? Or do you agree with the Geneva Conventions, which say there is no such thing as someone who doesn't have a status? Everybody has a status under the law.
Okay, and we're getting close to the end of our show here, so I wanted to point out again, you can actually take action on the sort of things that we're talking about on January 11th, 3 p.m., Federal Plaza, Adams and Dearborn Streets, followed by a march to Obama 2012 National Campaign Headquarters here in Chicago on Randolph Street. But just show up at 3 p.m. at Federal Plaza, Adams and Dearborn Street, and we'll get you all hooked up there. Also, you can find out more about all the things that Joe has been talking about tonight by checking out this website here. Joe has got lots of information there, and I presume links to various other things. You can find out about how you can view the response, the film that Joe is involved in, and we can also you'll find out more at our next show, which is coming up on December 30th. But this is up on our screen here is our next GLN meeting. We meet the first Wednesday of each month, 7 p.m. at the Burger Park Cultural Center, which is the corner of Sheridan Road in Granville, conveniently located just a few blocks east of the Granville Red Line L stop. And then, of course, as I was mentioning, our next show, just on the eve of New Year's Eve, next Friday, 6:30 p.m., we're going to be talking about a bunch of anti-war organizing and organizing against the G8 and NATO confabs coming up. And then I'd like to also invite people to give our thanks to the people who made tonight's show possible. And you'll see that information right now.